What's up, everybody? Welcome on in. It's 1TS Daily right here at One True Sport. I'm your host, Zack Heydorn. Good to be here. Hopefully everybody had a wonderful weekend. It is July 1st, so we are in the in the depths of summer at this point in time. July 1st. How crazy is that? And it was a busy weekend in professional wrestling, that's for sure. And we're here to talk about it all. If you are joining us on YouTube, thank you. If you're joining us on Twitter, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Forbidden Door. Last night, quite the show. We're going to get into all of that. We're going to get into the fallout. We're going to get into some specifics. What did everybody think of the show? Would love to hear your guys' thoughts, thumbs up, thumbs down. Hit me up in the chat, which I do have open right now. So you can get your opinion in or your rants and raves about last night's AEW Forbidden Door show. Another long one, that's for sure. But I think overall a good show at the same time. But we'll get into all of that. Let me take care of some propers first. Once again, this is 1TS Daily. We are live here on One True Sports YouTube channel, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 11 Eastern, talking the news of the day, the news of the week in professional wrestling, talking about what those crazy dirt sheets are talking about and all the wild news throughout the week in pro wrestling. So make it part of your day. Subscribe to One True Sport on YouTube so you don't miss a moment, so you don't miss anything that we do here on this show, but all of our other shows too. We've got a crazy amount of really fun pro wrestling content dropping here on the channel all throughout the week. If you hit subscribe, you won't miss any of it. It's that easy. If you're willing, hit like on our video. It helps us out in the algorithm. But most importantly, head over to onetruesport.com or click the little join button that's right there on your screen right now and become a member of One True Sport. We've got all sorts of membership tiers that get you access to a ton of content, but also some of the biggest legends in the professional wrestling business. You have all sorts of access, all sorts of opportunity to engage with, all sorts of opportunity to learn about professional wrestling. We got 3 different membership tiers. Check it out now. It's onetruesport.com. As for today's show, I have the live chat open. I also have super chats open. If you're able and willing to make a contribution to the show, make a contribution to One True Sport. It helps us out greatly. So ask us a question. Or drop in a comment about what we're talking about, and I'll make sure that gets read live on the air before our show is up here. Cool. Let's get into it, you guys, because we got a lot to get to. Forbidden Door last night in the main event. Swerve Strickland retains his AEW World Championship over Will Ospreay relatively cleanly. If you watched Friday's episode of the show, we did a bit of a preview for Forbidden Door. And one of the things that I was looking out for was a Don Callis interference in the main event against Will Ospreay. If you remember a couple weeks back, Will Ospreay was pretty dismissive of the Don Callis family and his involvement in that faction, and basically just saying, hey, I'm in the faction, but I don't need him. And then, the warning signs went off in my head, like, oh my gosh, are they going to do a shenanigan finish at Forbidden Door for one of the, biggest matches the company can put on, and Will Ospreay versus Swerve Strickland? And they didn't. I mean, they kind of did, but not really. Like, Don Callis didn't cost Swerve Strickland the match. That's a good thing. That's a pro in terms of the Forbidden Door show. But Don Callis was involved in the finish of the match. That's for sure. Callis comes out. He hands Swerve a screwdriver, or excuse me, not Swerve. He hands Will Ospreay a screwdriver to use on Swerve. Ospreay is apprehensive at first and acts like he's not going to use it. Prince Nana gets involved and pushes down Don Callis. This incenses Ospreay. Ospreay grabs Prince Nana, and actually he's going to stab him in the face with the screwdriver, and then like freaks out, like recognizes what he's doing, throws the screwdriver down, gets in the ring, and then that's the finish of the match. Swerve hits a few of his finisher kicks from there, and then pins Will Ospreay 1, 2, 3. So it wasn't an interference on the part of Don Callis that caused Will Ospreay to lose the match, but there was protection there. It was clearly designed to give Ospreay some protection in doing the job to Swerve Strickland. So I want to know, if you're listening live, I want to know in the comments, like, thumbs up or thumbs down on that finish. Thumbs up or thumbs down. I mean, it's key to kind of get a sense of what people's opinions are on this. I go back and forth. On that one. I mean, for one thing, I think Swerve needed to retain the title here. So I'm glad to see that he did that. I think that they're with Will Ospreay and the AEW World Championship, you want to have a bit of a journey there for him. I mean, they talked about on the show last night that, hey, Will Ospreay entered the company and got himself a world title match pretty darn quick. And it's true. And now he is one of the biggest, if not the biggest star that the company has. So it makes sense that he's in that position. But I also think you do want to tell a story there. You want people to, when he wins the world title, to be just salivating at the notion of him becoming champion. I mean, I think that's what you want. I also think you want him to take the title off a heel at some point, right? I mean, the Swerve match was a good one. I mean, it was a one rooted in respect for the most part. It was a solid, babyface build. I think they could have taken it deeper, but they didn't. And I think the reason why they didn't, we saw on during the match last night, that it wasn't going to be a crowning moment for Will Ospreay, and they had some shenanigans involved in the finish. But it was important for Swerve to retain, because it gives Ospreay that journey that he can go on now. And Swerve now has a signature, moment for his title reign, which I think is really important for him. I think that's key. You want your champions to be kind of synonymous with the era of the company that they're in. And in order to do that, you have to have big title matches, and you have to have title matches of consequence, and you have to have those champions win. And so I think it was smart to keep the belt on him. More on Swerve here a little bit later in the show. As for Will Ospreay, Kyle Fletcher was out there at the end of the match, kind of hugging Ospreay. There wasn't any mention of there was a mention of Don Callis, but you didn't see him trying to comfort Ospreay, after the loss. That was just Fletcher. So you got to wonder what they're going to do with Ospreay moving forward here. He's going to wrestle Daniel Garcia for the AEW International Championship on Wednesday night's Dynamite. My guess is this is where you see an official, turn for Ospreay, in that he's getting booted out of the Don Callis family. Either he's getting booted out or he's leaving, voluntarily. I think that the angle here is he didn't win the match. He didn't win the world title because he didn't take Don Callis' suggestion to use the screwdriver. That's going to incense Don Callis, and now you move on and you go and kick him out of the group. And now he's got, a ready-made feud throughout the summer. The multitude of different opponents. He can work with Kyle Fletcher. He can work with, Takeshita again. That's, I think, his immediate future is kind of running through those guys. I don't know what the match is for him at All In. Maybe it's MJF. They've spent a lot of time teasing that match. So that could be a direction that they go to get both those guys on the card in a meaningful way. Is it going to be for the international title? I don't know. that's going to roll some eyes. It's certainly going to roll some eyes on this show. Yeah, because I'm just like, really, like that's a mid-card title, and this is a top tier main event level match for the company. But that's kind of the stage you want something like that to happen on, right? I mean, Will Ospreay versus MJF, that's a big time match, and so I think it makes sense to do that match on at All In. And again, they've certainly been teasing it and talking about it a lot. So I think that's an angle. I don't think you want to do like a payoff of the Don Callis feud at that event, right? I mean, I don't know. It just that nothing there seems worthy of All In. I mean, Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher, like not really. Ospreay versus Takeshita. I mean, yes, I think that'd be one heck of a match, but also, is it Wembley Stadium worthy? I mean, we're talking like, is it WrestleMania worthy for AEW? Because that's what All In is slowly becoming, like their biggest show of the year. And so, yeah, I don't know that that's an Ospreay match that you want to go with. MJF makes sense. Good morning, Eddie, who's in our chat and chiming in here. What's up, Eddie? Hopefully you had a good weekend. Thanks so much for being here. Eddie says here, Ospreay and Swerve would have been the money match for All In. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I thought too. And then they pulled the trigger on it early. And so that means that they've clearly got something else, at least for the world title, planned for All In. I mean, you're not, if you know for sure that you have something big, you can hotshot Ospreay versus Swerve, which is what they did, but you got to have something big. You got to have something there. I think they do. I think we got an inkling as to what that is during the post-show media scrum. And that's our second story to talk about here tonight. So I will, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. Last but not least, like it was one heck of a match, Swerve versus Ospreay. I mean, what I like about Ospreay matches these days is that it's not like one note in the flippy flyy craziness. That's part of it. That's part of it. That athleticism is part of what Ospreay does, but he's also like folded in a layer of aggression, like the just the demeanor on some of the moves, like some of the strikes, the hidden blade as a finisher. Like, man, that's good pro wrestling, and it's not high flying, but it's intense and it's dangerous. So I think that he's really come a long way in developing his style. And then Swerve too. I mean, I always wonder going into these matches with Will Ospreay, like, can you hang with him? Can you hang with that guy? Because he's so good, and he can carry anybody to a good match. He can probably carry me to a good match, for God's sakes. But you got to be able to hang in your own right if you really want to take the match to another level. And I thought Swerve did, to no surprise. I thought it was a really, really good match. Eddie says here, by far the best match of the event. Yeah, I think it's very easy to say match of the night without question, without much discussion either. I think it's by far the best match of the night. Eddie, what's up, Sean? Sean's in the chat here. Good to see you, man. Good to see you here joining us. Sean says, I'm glad Swerve got a big win over a guy like Ospreay. Yeah, it is important. It's important for him to get W's like that. Like, you want him to define this era of AEW, as I just mentioned. And so in order to do that, he's got to get W's, and he's got to get notches on his belt as far as, championship and successful title defenses. And this was one of them. Even though, a little shenanigans to protect Ospreay in the finish, but nothing that's gonna put an asterisk next to the win for Swerve either. And I think that's the balance that you wanted to have. I mean, it's absolutely the balance that you wanted to have. And I think that's why you needed those two to have an absolute classic too, so that people remember that part of it and not the finish, which is there for storyline purposes mainly. But yeah, really good match. More on Swerve here in a minute. The biggest surprise of the night, if you take away the fact that, so this is the match of the night, Swerve versus Ospreay. The moment of the night, Britt Baker returns to AEW and very much plants herself right back in the main event scene in the women's division by confronting Mercedes Moné. That's a money match, no pun intended. So I'm glad to see, it was so refreshing. I don't know about you guys, but it was so refreshing to see Britt Baker return, and not like return to the middle of the card, like doing something on the side in her own universe. She jumped back in and went face to face with a money-making opponent that's big time for the women's division in Mercedes Moné. Like, that's the matchup. That's the matchup you want to have. That's why that matchup is why you bring in Mercedes Moné for that match, And so I'm glad that Tony Khan is kind of, pivoting a bit from his usual strategy, or what we've seen for the last 5 years, of just holding back some of the dream matches. Swerve versus Ospreay is one that, I expected him to hold on to for a long time. And so you got that right away. And now here we go. Britt Baker's back in AEW, not messing around, not holding anything back. She is going out there and she's going to wrestle Mercedes Moné. Now, Sean brings up a very good point. It just feels weird that the match will be for a secondary women's title, though. Boy, does it ever. Boy, does it ever, Sean. Yeah. And the TBS Championship had this same issue when it was around the waist of Jade Cargill, back however long ago that was now. Jade made that title feel bigger, or at least as big as the Women's World Championship. And you want the secondary titles to mean something, but they can't be equal to the world title. They can't. Like, the world title is a tool that you use to showcase to your audience who are the biggest stars and what are the biggest matches. You can't do that if you've got 7 titles on the show that you all try to position as the same thing. And the men's division has a real big problem with this. Very big issue with this. Well, Ospreay's the international champion. He's one of the biggest stars in the company. Okada is the continental champion, right? Another one of the biggest stars of the company. And Swerve's the world champion. Like, there's not a lot of difference between those talents, and therefore those belts are all kind of the same. The same goes for Mercedes Moné in the women's division. I don't know why that match should be for the world title. I mean, period, end of story. I know that you're doing your thing with Mariah May and you're telling your story with Toni Storm and she's your world champion, but there's, that is a secondary story and a secondary match. When you look at Mercedes Moné against Britt Baker, that's the biggest money match you can have in AEW on the women's side of things. So, like, trying to masquerade it as something else, I think it's just it's kind of foolish. It's kind of silly. Like, you want that match to be for the world title. That's what signifies who's the best. And so, that's a miss. The match is the right one to go with, but the place on the card that it's going to take place is an issue. And so I agree with you, Sean, very much so in that regard. Thanks for the comment, man. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they say and how Tony Khan handles, bringing Britt Baker back into the fold. I don't know about you guys, but I want to see those two, out in the ring with microphones. And I don't normally say that about Mercedes Moné. She's not, typically a great mic worker. I mean, there's just no two ways about that. She's not, a great promo. Britt Baker is. And Britt Baker, she's got attitude. She's got charisma. She's a star. And she doesn't hold back, for better or worse. And I think sometimes she shoots herself in the foot with some things that she says. Sometimes she's ineffective in making her opponents look good. And that she goes in a little too hard and a little too close to the vest in terms of like zingers and one-liners and things of that nature. But she can bring it too at other times. And so I am looking forward to seeing if Mercedes Moné can elevate her game on the microphone to meet Britt Baker. Because otherwise, like, I don't think Britt Baker, I think Britt Baker is going to have, a bit of a chip on her shoulder. I would, if I were her, like Mercedes Moné comes in, big contract, big money. That's great, but Britt Baker's, she's the one, she's been there. She's been there, right? She's like the anchor of the women's division in AEW. So I could see her like, a little John Cena Rock type back and forth in terms of like quality necessarily. But like there's some real life tension there because of where they're both positioned on the show and their history with the company. So I'm in it. I'm in for that. I'm excited to see how that goes and how they play off one another. I'm assuming that's the match we get at All In between. That's a big women's match for that show. That's where you want to do it. The only thing missing is that it's not for the world title. And man, I hope they can rectify that. But it just doesn't seem like they have any interest in doing so at this point. What's up, David? Thanks for joining in. Appreciate you being here, man. Thanks. Yeah. All right, let's pivot to WWE. Smackdown on Friday night, a big angle. Paul Heyman, at the request of Solo Sikoa, is supposed to acknowledge Sikoa as the tribal chief. He doesn't, and he gets put through a table for his troubles. Maybe the greatest Paul Heyman segment ever. That, I mean, there's recency bias there, for sure. I mean, there's no question about it. Definite recency bias. Call me out on it if you want. But that was a heck of a promo. That was a heck of a segment. And it all was on the shoulders of Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman looked disheveled. He looked tired. He looked like he'd been crying for 4 days. He looked panicked. I mean, he just sold all of that so well with just his facial expressions. And then, the moment comes for him to acknowledge Solo Sikoa. He doesn't, and the crowd just pops. I mean, that was like one of the biggest standout things for me watching that segment is like it confirmed what you think, right? Like, oh, this bloodline story is really good. They've got it going on. There's investment there, and then you wonder because you don't always know because you don't get that immediate feedback every single time they trot on an angle. But here they did. I mean, and it was deep investment, big crowd pop. And for Paul Heyman, like what a weird sentence to say. Unbelievable. Like really, really great segment. A lot of people in the chat here commenting about it. RIP Paul Heyman from Eddie. David jumps in. I've loved the emotion they connected to in that segment. Sean, that was nuts, but so awesome. I'm assuming he's okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming too. I mean, it was kind of a nasty bump too. Heyman kind of like, I don't know, when they do those table bumps sometimes and they do like the power bomb on them and you slide off as you hit, you end up kind of landing on your head or the back of your neck. And that's what happened to Paul Heyman. And so I hope he's okay. I think he's okay. There's been no news, nothing in the sheets or anywhere that would lead me to believe otherwise. And I would definitely, report that on the show if I had news of my own. But I don't. So I think everything is fine. But what a segment. I mean, what a segment to really put sympathy on Paul Heyman. He looked very sympathetic. But more so than that, like it showcased the viciousness of the new bloodline and just the rogue-like demeanor that they have where they're the new bloodline. They're not listening to the old guard. They don't care what the old guard has to say. They don't care. They don't care. They don't care. They're going to do their things their way. They're going to hurt people the way they want. And that segment really sold the anarchy of the bloodline perfectly. Jacob Fatu is a great addition to that group. I mean, man, there's a just crazy intensity there that I think plays well off of Solo Sikoa, but also the other members of the group like Tama Tonga and Tongaloa. They're the more calm, cool, collective, vicious enforcer guys of the group. And then Fatu is kind of just the unhinged guy, and they play really nicely together. Obviously, this is leading to the big return of Roman Reigns, and I remember WrestleMania. Okay, so I was at WrestleMania. Quick story here. I was at WrestleMania, and as Cody Rhodes is celebrating in the ring after the main event, and you can see this on social media. Someone filmed it, but in real time, Roman Reigns walked up to the top of the ramp, and he had a moment with Paul Heyman up there. It didn't seem like it was in storyline. It wasn't filmed by WWE. It wasn't put on the screen during Cody's celebration. It was off camera for all intents and purposes. And they just hugged it out for 2-3 minutes, just hugging. Clearly, Heyman was saying something to Reigns. And I think that Paul Heyman is committed and invested in making the rest of this story work for Roman Reigns, now that Roman doesn't have the world title anymore. Seeing that interaction, it was man, there's a connection there. There's a personal connection there. And I parlay what I thought about that interaction to what we see on a regular basis with Heyman recently and Reigns not being there. Heyman is just building and building and building and laying the foundation and putting brick on top of brick on top of brick for Reigns' return. And this was a major, major chapter in that story. So we don't know when it's going to happen yet. They're kind of seems like they're kind of building to Cody Rhodes versus Solo Sikoa at SummerSlam. Maybe it happens then. I don't know, but I do know that that's the piece of business that's on the table. That's what they're building. That's what they're creating. And it was a home run, A+ segment on SmackDown. Eddie jumping in going, only problem is that the old bloodline won't have a good counter for Jacob unless Brock is brought in, to help Roman and Paul. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Eddie. I don't see Brock being a part of this, honestly. I kind of hope he's not, actually. He's a big star, yes, and he's got the Paul Heyman connection, absolutely. But, I think the emotion is in Heyman and Reigns getting back together with the Usos and getting back together with Sami Zayn. I think that's the hook. And so, yeah, the counter for Fatu is going to be one of those guys, I think. Jay maybe. I mean, I think that's the emotion you're building to. Part of the story is the original bloodline, after all they've been through, coming back together and taking on the new bloodline. And eventually, I think this leads to Roman versus Rock at some point. But that's where I think they're headed with this, Eddie. But we'll see. I mean, Brock certainly adds star power into the mix, but he's also kind of on the outside looking in too. I mean, yeah, he's not. I think Jacob Fatu is. I don't know that he's really on Jay's level yet. I mean, Jay is a main eventer. He's a main event guy in WWE, big star. I mean, I think if Jacob Fatu ends where Jey Uso is, it's a pretty good run for him. Nothing to sneeze at, Eddie. Nothing to sneeze at there. That's SmackDown. Okay, and we'll finish off with Raw tonight. Raw is here. We got the go home show for Money in the Bank, which is this weekend. Some big stuff happening on the show tonight. We got Drew McIntyre versus Sheamus for Ilya Dragunov to qualify for Money in the Bank. We've got Dakota Kai versus Zoe Stark versus Ivy Nile to qualify for Money in the Bank. Karrion Kross is going to wrestle Xavier Woods. Dominic Mysterio is going to wrestle Rey Mysterio. And then Liv Morgan will put her Women's World Championship on the line against Zelina Vega. So a pretty big night on Raw. I'm sure we'll get some Wyatt Six stuff too, which will be really intriguing. But yeah, it's WWE's chance to make their final case for Money in the Bank. I think, I'm looking at that Drew McIntyre Sheamus Dragunov match in particular for what is going to be like the main happenings of the show this week. Is Drew going to get in that match? Are we going to see CM Punk? Are we going to see CM Punk this week? To cost Drew the match again. That's what I got my eye on. And I'm sure that's what we'll be talking about on tomorrow's show, kind of with the fallout of that. But I think that's your big match for a big story, big angle this week on the show. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. And nuggets for Monday, July 1st, 2024 here on 1TS Daily. Ricochet has officially been moved to the alumni section of WWE.com. That's the moment. That's how you know. Contract expired and free agents for Ricochet. Maybe he's headed to AEW. I'd say that's probably likely. We'll see. We'll see soon enough. Also, Tony Khan announced during the Forbidden Door media scrum after the show that $1 million gate again for this Forbidden Door concept. That's the third straight time that they've gotten $1 million gate out of Forbidden Door. So if you're thinking to yourself, man, that was a fun show, but I hope they don't do it again. They're going to do it again. It clearly draws. I mean, it clearly brings people in, draws people in. There's clearly a hook there from a business perspective, in that it does good business for the company. And he says here in the chat, I don't believe Tony. I don't know why he'd lie about that. He probably just wouldn't mention it. But you never know. He is a pro wrestling promoter after all. So you do have to take everything he says with a grain of salt. But yeah, well, $1 million gate's not bad. And so as long as that dollar amount keeps trickling in, they're going to do the Forbidden Door concept, folks. So strap in. I think we're in it for the long haul. And we will wrap up there. This is 1TS Daily here for One True Sport. Guys, we're here every single day, Monday through Friday, 11 Eastern, 10 Central, talking about the news of the week in pro wrestling, the news of the day, reviewing shows, previewing shows, all sorts of fun stuff. You want to check us out. Make us part of your day. Make us part of your wrestling day. Just subscribe to our channel, One True Sport. Like the video if you can, and think about joining. Think about becoming a member of One True Sport, picking out a membership tier at onetruesport.com, and really diving in to all the different perks that we offer. You're not going to want to miss it. We offer some really cool stuff, and I think you'll really like it. So cool. Thank you to Eddie. Thank you to Sean. Thank you to everybody else. David, for listening. Thanks if you listened on Twitter. I appreciate you. If you listened on YouTube and saw us on YouTube, thank you. You can follow more of my work regularly at Brass Ring Media. That's my own little shop, long form analysis on pro wrestling. We have a YouTube channel. We are live all throughout the week. Monday through Friday, or Monday through Thursday, really twice on Thursday, actually, with all sorts of shows, analyzing current event-based pro wrestling, diverse array of hosts and topics and different ways to cover the business. It's all there for you at Brass Ring Media. So check it out, please. Would love to earn your business and to earn your attention and to earn, a subscribe, if you will. You can check out me on social media at Zack_Heydorn on Twitter. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much. Let's have a great week. I'll see you all tomorrow right here, 11 Eastern. It's 1TS Daily on One True Sport. See ya.